Another story I find really interesting, and I actually want to make a film about it one day, but like actual, like accurate, like down to every detail how it was is described is Travis Walton. Have you ever heard of his story?
I don't. The name doesn't sound familiar. I don't think so.
No. Have you seen Fire in the Sky, the movie?
Oh yeah, that's a movie from the '90s, right?
Yeah,
Early '90s.
yeah.
Yeah,
So this is Travis Walton here, but uh, yeah,
that was about like an abduction in the forest, right?
exactly, yeah. And
Hmm.
that movie though is complete bullshit, and yeah, and almost like ruined for me, like basically it's this typical Hollywood thing, like, and I'm almost like I think I even heard Travis in one interview kind of basically saying that he kind of pretty much wished that he never cooperated with them. He never told them because he basically told them they were looking, oh yeah, we're gonna make a movie, about your case, what happened to you. And he was like, okay, okay, and so he tells them all these details, and then they fucking go and they just do their own version. So basically, they
Uh,
make these aliens look like these scary monsters, nothing like what he described. They make it look like they're like literally abduct him, and then they're like trying to torture him, putting needles in him. Nothing like that. When you listen, and I've seen interviews with this guy over and over, and of course he is one of those stories where you could say, oh, just some guy alone in the woods. But then when you start looking at the actual details, you realize, well, no. First of all, he wasn't alone. There was 7 or 8 of them, because they were like a logging party, right? They were cutting down trees in the forest for company.
mhm.
And on their way back at night, they again saw a glow in the sky, because like I said, what Bob Lazar was saying, how the vehicles operate, or Billy Meyer, it's they tend to glow at night when they're with the electromagnetic discharge. And so they saw it as they were driving. They thought it looked kind of like the part of the forest might have been on fire. Hence why the movie, I guess, was called, Fire in the Sky. And then they went to, what's it called? Yeah, to pull over, to kind of see this thing, and they literally pull up next to this disc that's up in the, like, floating 20 feet, whatever, off the ground. And they were all just freaked out, like, what the fuck, and they obviously heard about like UFOs, and this is like in the 70s, but there was already all this science fiction talk. So they heard about this, but suddenly you're there in the middle of this forest, and you're like, holy shit, what do you do? And they were all pretty much panicking. So that's kind of accurate how it is in the movie. And then
Mhm.
Travis gets out, but then from that point on, pretty much is BS. So again, in the movie, there's this light that it shoots out from the disc, and it grabs him, lifts him up in the air. It's very cinematic. I gotta give it to them. And then he gets dumped to the ground, and then the guys rush, whatever, just speed away in the car. The guys that were in the car, and then and then afterwards they come back. He's gone. The spacecraft is gone, and then they go back to the town, and they basically call the sheriff. They tell him, and everybody knows each other in the town, so. The sheriff, of course, at first is like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then he realizes these guys are like paranoid. These guys, they're all young guys, but they're all, like tough guys kind of thing. And
Mhm.
so he's like, "Holy shit! Like these guys, I don't think they're bullshitting. They really saw something. Now, is it true? I don't know. Maybe they were imagining." But, anyways, he starts writing down their story, all that stuff. Then he notifies, I forget, somebody, and then through somehow the FBI gets involved. They come to this little town. They do this whole report, they think, and then basically they start then thinking, because then like a few days pass by, and they're all thinking, well, these guys maybe just came up with this alien story, but in reality they actually killed this guy Travis. Maybe there was some, they were disagreement, yeah, guys, whatever, right? They were arguing, and
Yeah,
then they
right.
killed him, and they just buried his body, and now they came up with this excuse, and we can't think. So they did a search rescue. For a few days, they're searching for this guy with dogs, helicopter, everything. Like, FBI is involved. They can't find a thing. They literally, where his tracks end, the smell where the dogs thing lead to, is
Mhm.
exactly the spot where they say this disc was floating, and that's where they saw him get, basically knocked down, and then they sped off, and that's where it ends. There's no trail. There's nothing else, after that, and they keep on looking, scouring, and nothing. And after, I forget now how many days it is, but I think it's like 7, 8 days. He literally, in the middle of the night, shows up. He calls his family. He tells them like, "Hey, I'm in this telephone booth and this and that." And they're like, "What the fuck?" They all thought he's dead. And yeah, the FBI is like, also, what the hell? So then the FBI is thinking maybe this guy's in on it. Maybe they came up with the story and he was hiding so they can, make the national news and, sell some, to make money, right?
Right.
And of course, they don't sell any books. They don't release anything. Like the other guys just completely disappeared after that. They were all just like, I don't want to have anything to do with the story because people were ridiculing them and all that stuff. Travis also was panicked, but after a few years, he started talking about it. So this is one of the interviews here. And again, I'll provide the link so you guys can listen to it for yourself. It's a really incredible story. But what's interesting is that, first of all, unlike in the movie that they showed, it basically, he said, and all the other guys say that it literally almost looked like what he even thinks now happened is that basically when he was getting closer to the spacecraft and then he ends up going right underneath it. He wanted to like touch it. He said it was like very close, and he could feel this electric discharge kind of glowing around the aircraft. And suddenly it almost seems like static electricity, like when it goes discharges. Except it's a lot bigger voltage, and it just went right through him, just grounded through him, and that's what knocked him down. So because even the other guys described it not like it is in the movie that it's a light, they describe it like a lightning almost went and just hit him and it knocks him down. And then they just that freaked the hell out of them, so they disappeared. And of course, when they came back, he was gone. Well, he describes when he wakes up, he's in this little room. And it's got very, very very interesting how he describes even how he looks the room and how it's all so perfectly clean, and the ceilings and the floors kind of seem to blend together. There's no hard edges anywhere. The light, there's like, it almost seems like the whole ceiling is glowing. It's like this the ceiling itself, which basically now we can do using LED technology. But back in the day when he was describing this, there was no such thing. Like we had very simple.
This is early 90s. Well, 70s. You said?
Yeah, 70s. So we just had these simple light bulbs back in the day, and that was it. So the way he described it, that almost seems like the whole ceiling was kind of glowing, and I think that's actually the part where he's describing it there, and he basically was like I said, he said he wakes up. And he remembers like he was going in and out of consciousness. He was horrible pain all over his body and chest. And then he realizes he has this object, like a cylinder, kind of transparent object on his chest. And then suddenly he feels like somebody's coming in, and he looks down, and he kind of sees, like to the side, basically through this little opening, this door, these little aliens come in. And he describes, he says, like the typical Greys, like they're kind of shorter than him, no hair, very skinny, big eyes, tiny little mouth and thing, and they don't say anything, they don't make any expressions, nothing. And he said these big black eyes, he just got really freaked out. Right. So he just got up and he grabbed that object that was on his chest and he started swinging that thing. And he said he knocked one of them down, and it was almost like if you pushed a little child. Like they're very weak, these beings. And he's yelling at them, and they're all just kind of, that one like bump fell and then fell into another one of those beings. There was like 4 or 5 of them. And then they kind of just look at him and kind of like, pretty much like he said he thinks like they probably looked at him like, okay, this guy's a little mental. Let's back away. Because he was just like, yelling.
What the fuck is wrong with this guy?
And he said he was yelling because he said, he just this is not something he believed in, like aliens or anything. So he didn't know what the fuck was happening, but he said, first of all, he felt like shit. He was really, really hurting. And then, he describes this whole story, and it's a very, very interesting story. And then literally afterwards, he meets this humanoid-looking alien, but also he doesn't say anything. He's like blonde hair, really tall guy, really like physically well-built. But that guy like comes in, takes him by his hand, and he said, like, I don't know. He said he didn't remember whether he was very weak or just that guy was so strong, but he literally couldn't resist him. This guy just grabbed his arm or something, his forearm, and just drags him. They take him out, and that's when he realizes he was inside this little disc. They go down into this sort of hangar-looking space where there's a bunch of these discs, and then they take him into another room, and then there's 3 other humanoids, basically like human beings, but they're like dressed in this very tight outfits, and they don't say anything. They just kind of look at him, and he kind of was calmer, but he's still like where am I? This and that. He's asking all these questions, and they're all just kind of looking at him and kind of showing him like calm down, kind of relax, kind of thing. And that's it. And then eventually he starts getting more and more frustrated, and they put him on this sort of like a table that's there, and they put this thing over his mouth, and he just passes out, and that's it. And then he just remembers, he wakes up, and what's interesting is he wakes up, and that's where his family and the police, whatever, when they pick him up, he's at the closest, basically, what do you call it, main road from where he got abducted, you could say, or where he disappeared. So it almost looks like those aliens, and I think that's basically what happened. Is they basically by accident heard him, because they basically, maybe they were parking their spacecraft, let's say, they were taking a break, and he walks, like imagine if you were like, I don't know, park your car somewhere and some idiot, animal goes under your car, and then you hit the gas and you hit the
yeah, you basically run him over.
Yeah, and then you feel bad, and you're like, holy shit, it's still alive, but so you take it. So that almost looks like that. Like they took him in this spacecraft because they're like, holy shit, he's still alive. Maybe like we can help him. And he basically didn't even realize when he came to that a few days had passed. So he didn't even know that he was out for, like I said, 7 or 8 days. And it almost looks like that. Like they just picked him up and they restored his health. And then after that, they put him back, but they didn't know where the fuck do we put him back? We can't put him back in the forest because what is he going to walk? So they basically went and they found the closest road to where they found him, where they picked him up from, and that's where they put him.
Off.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it's a thing. Anyways, he describes a lot of cool details. I really recommend people, I guess, go and hear it.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. I only saw the movie, but I didn't know.
Yeah, and the movie's garbage. Like I said, don't listen to the movie. The movie, maybe the part where. Well, he said that there was really no disagreement between him and the other guys, but the movie, maybe what's true is afterwards when he arrives, they kind of show how the town starts turning on them, saying they all came up with this bullshit story, and now all this media's in town, blah blah blah. Then the FBI thinks that they also like wasted all these government resources, that they tried to fake his disappearance, and what they do is, and what's interesting, and that's one thing that made me really, I guess, almost believe the story, is the fact that. Then the FBI and then some other, I think the police department, they basically tell them, hey, would you all do, a lie detector test? And they all do it. All, 7 or 8 guys that were there. And never, ever, and because, lie detector tests are never perfect, right? But there's sort of like this, I guess, error or margin of error that people kind of accept. Well, they've never seen so many people, like I said, I think it's 7 or 8 people, all of those guys, testify, they all do it individually, obviously, and they all pass the lie detector test. Not only that they pass it once, but they end up doing it 3 times, I think, 3 or 4 times.
And passing all 3 times?
Yeah, all of them.
All of them.
Which basically all of the other like people who do lie detector tests and people psychologists saying that they all were, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but they all believed that what they saw was true at least. So let's say let's say they were all hypnotized and they were thinking, well, they all believed it. They were not making up the stuff because to them it is real. And that's the interesting thing, is that all of these guys, they all different backgrounds, different things, and they all described the exact same event. So and they all passed multiple lie detector tests, which makes you go, okay. And then afterwards, like I said, the police was never able to find how they, pulled it off, where the guy was hiding, or, if they were, if they pulled off this hoax, and he was hiding for those few days in the forest. They did find certain weird marks on his body, like things like that.
Oh, so, like needle marks and stuff?
No, not needle marks, but like something like he was, like burned or from, I guess from like a lightning or electrical discharge.